Alright, we'll just wait for a couple people to log on and then I'll get talking. So, alright, we've got our first person on. So,
cool.
Hello there. Welcome to NAOC 2016. We're live from Washington, D.C. Hello, Science in Michigan. Thanks for joining us. You guys can let us know if you're hearing us okay. Someone can give a quick shout out back. I always have to double check, especially
after
things have gone wrong, so we'll give them a chance. I know Science in Michigan will send something back real fast here. Yep, can hear you. Thank you so much. All right, so I am here with
Janet Ng,
and she is known by
Janet Ng Bio.
You had to look there for a second.
Yeah, I was like, I forget now.
So, I'm Wildlife Bio Gal. Oh, awesome, Tiny Bird Girl. Yeah, great that you can hear us. We're going to have some fun. Periscope's always a great time. So anyways, here are our Twitter handles. If you want to take a screenshot with it, makes it a lot easier for you to have it. If there's questions or things that you've missed or you want to be able to watch stuff afterwards, go to wildlifebiogal.com. There'll be links to YouTube and also SoundCloud and also Periscope that you can watch everything afterwards. So it's basically full service,
cool.
SciComm fun there.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
But anyways, so we're going to talk about some of Janet's research, her academic career, what fun she's had going all over Canada and the prairies there. So, but anyways, why don't you tell us maybe where you did your master's, where you're doing your PhD now?
Cool, yeah. So I did a Bachelor of Science at the University of Alberta, which is in Edmonton, Alberta, which is where I grew up, so it's kind of really handy. Awesome program, and I learned a lot from it. But because it was such a big department, there were so many people around me that were just doing really, really cool wildlife research and ecology research that I decided that a master's was definitely, hopefully in my future, if I could find a project and supervisor, which thankfully I did. I worked with Dr. Mark Brigham at the University of Regina, and I got to study common nighthawk ecology, which was super fun. They're ridiculous birds, and they do all sorts of things, and they're just so unique in the bird world. It was really, really neat. It was really difficult, but it was really neat. I did a little bit of work in between my master's and my PhD, so I did a little bit of environmental consulting. I did some nonprofit work, doing some science communication and environmental education as well too.
Do you feel like that helped you before you moved on?
I think so. I mean, I don't think everybody needs it, but I think it's definitely a growth experience, and you learn some really specific skills that maybe aren't the first things that you learn when you're in academia. And from the consulting experience as well too, my PhD now has a lot of applied components to it, where I work with industry and I work with government as well too. And so then having sort of a little bit more of a consulting background, industry background, I think helps sort of frame questions in ways that can be useful.
Okay.
Like we get a lot of flack from industry that, we're in the academia ivory tower, we don't really understand how it goes. But part of that comes from working with people, asking a lot of questions, but also, not everybody, some of us have done some other work as well too. So yeah, it was good. I really valued both of those experiences, and doing the environmental education and work as well too was just super, super fun. It never felt like it was like I was working, right?
Okay.
And so then I've tried to retain that component when I started my PhD back at the University of Alberta, studying with Dr. Aaron Bain and Dr. Troy Wellcome, studying Frugianus hawks in the prairies.
Nice. So what got you into hawks? Like, what was there a moment that you're just like, oh, hawks are like the thing, or were you like always like pro hawk, like growing up? Was that a thing you always wanted to study?
I think I wanted to study everything. My favorite bird is always the last bird that I saw. But I distinctly remember one of my first field jobs was down in the prairies. I was working for Dr. Nicola Coper, who's going to be at NAOC this week. And I was doing point counts. And this huge hawk flew off of, I think probably an S platform, and just dive bombed the crap out of me. And it was super scary. It was super awesome. And I remember
kind of one of those, like, after you get through it, you're like, oh, that was just amazing. But like while it's happening, you're like, oh,
it's gonna get me. And I distinctly remember being like, oh, I want to work on that. But at the time, I was like in first or second year university, and I had really no concept of what any of that really meant at that time for me, anyways. And just being like, oh, that's cool. So when this opportunity came up to actually do this work, I was really, really pumped about it, because they are a very cool species, and there's lots of interesting things that we don't know about them yet. And yeah, we're working to answer a lot of those types of questions.
Nice. So, tell us a little bit about your hawks. Like, what's, the big issues, are they threatened, endangered, or are they just, like, invasive? Like, I mean, let's assume nobody knows anything about them. Like, tell us,
That's good, because I think I started out basically that way. So Ferruginous hawks are awesome, just FYI. But I always like to start off with why they're interesting, I guess. So they are North America's largest soaring raptor, so the North America's largest boodio.
Okay.
They're really big. Females can be 2 kilograms, and I was just talking with somebody else how to like translate that into like weight. So that's basically like a 2-liter carton of milk packed into a hawk.
Yeah, I find, like, granted, like, I am not, a birder at heart. I'm more of an ecologist, and so this is my first birding conference I've gone to, and so it's funny, like, everyone is always comparing the sizes of the birds to either, half a stick of butter or 2 gallons of milk. Like, I gotta figure out what my mute swans are. So, I mean, that's gonna be my challenge, is to figure out what my mute swans are equivalent to.
Totally.
So.
It must be something, like, really unique as well, too, so people remember it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I would be, okay, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Because they are big birds.
I'll have to do it before my talk on Wednesday. I'll figure it out, and I'll make sure the announcement comes out then. So.
If a Ferruginous hawk and a mute swan had to duke it out, a mute swan would win hands down. And that's one of the interesting things about Ferruginous hawks is they're big. The females can have, so they're bigger than the males. Wingspans can be up to 5 feet. So they're actually wider than I am tall. They're just a big hawk.
Should we make you stand up tall?
Relatively, like, they're just a really big bird. And so they're beautiful, they're majestic, they're really iconic on the prairies. But there's a lot of issues surrounding them because they live in places where there's a lot of human development as well, too. And it's long been thought that they're very sensitive to human disturbance. So then they're living in a landscape where we have a lot of agricultural conversions, a lot of cropland. There's grazing and stuff as well too, but less human disturbance related to that. But of course, what we've seen in the last few years is a lot more industrial infrastructure. So oil and gas development has really erupted in the last couple of decades. Power line construction, road construction, just lots of people out on the landscape as well too. So then it became a concern that these guys might be sensitive to human disturbance, and should we be protecting them? How are the populations doing? And unfortunately, with population-wise, they have declined a lot since the mid-1990s. From about 3,000 birds, we're back to about 1,000 to 1,200 in Canada. So not a lot of birds in total.
Yeah, so that is a big drop then.
The graph is one of those scary endangered species graphs where it just goes zoom straight down.
Where my graph for my mute swans is like zoom the other way.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So some species can do really well, but Ferruginous hawks look like they tanked really hard in the 90s and until now. And so then they've been listed as a threatened species federally, so they're protected at the national level, and then in Alberta they're also listed as endangered because we've through a monitoring program we've really seen like pretty big decline in the population. So there's the interest, and it's related back to trying to understand how sensitive they are, what are they sensitive to if they are, and how can that be mitigated or how can that be reduced in some way.
So how do you go about like capturing them and everything? Like, do you just put up like the mist nets? Are you having to put like traps that they come in and attack and then you're able to catch it? Like, how do you do that? I'm imagining the prairies. Like, the furthest I've been is Winnipeg in Canada. I've never been out further west. Yeah. And so like I know it's pretty flat and open there, but like how is the rest of like the prairies as you're getting into Saskatchewan and Alberta?
Even flatter than Winnipeg? I mean, we've got
some like table flat was
yeah, you can. There's in Alberta and Saskatchewan. There's always the joke that you can see your dog running away for 3 days.
Oh, okay.
It's mostly true. It's mostly true. And so because of that, a little bit of wind. If you've ever worked with mist nets before, so that's like the really fine mesh that you can set up that hopefully birds aren't supposed to see, and they're going to fly into it. But what mist nets are supposed to also do is they're typically set up in front of vegetation. So then this fine mesh kind of blends in with the background. You can't do that in the prairies because there are no trees to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And there's always a bit of a breeze always blowing, if it's not actually like gale force winds too. So trapping is something I was really lucky to get to. I've worked a little bit on the trapping end of things. Because our project also puts satellite transmitters onto birds as well too, to track what kind of habitats they're using, what their survival is like, where do they go in the winter, and so forth. And that's some of the work that Jesse Watson is doing in our lab. He's a master's student studying habitat use on the home range. And yeah, so trapping is challenging because they're smart birds.
Okay.
They're pretty big and scary. So I remember the first time handling a raptor was a great horned owl, and remembering being very, very worried.
Like you take one look at the talons on there and you're like,
oh man, the first time. So one of the ways that we catch birds is with, so they're kind of modified mist nets. If you've worked with mist nets before, you're probably used to like a couple of panels that sort of have bags, and these little songbirds kind of hit them and then they kind of drop into the bag and they're held there. Instead, what we use, because we're trying to bring birds in with their defensive behavior, so they're actually like releasable Dogaza nets.
yeah. Oh, nice.
Cool. So they're Dogaza nets, and they're basically like flat net with really big like holes. Like the mesh size is really big, and they're attached to mist net poles, but they're just attached really lightly. So when the actual hawk hits it, the net actually blows off and goes with the net, and then everybody kind of softly tumbles and gets super tangled in mist net. But to bring them to the net, because it's usually like 6 feet by 8 foot net, it's like a really small window and usually set up in a V. It's a small window that we want to draw them through, so we actually set these up relatively close to the nest when the nestlings are quite young. We call, they're our stunt owls, so essentially it's a bait animal, and we've typically used a live great horned owl.
Oh, okay.
Like a falconer's bird that we put out onto a post into the lonely prairies. We wish him good luck and apologize as we slowly walk away. And then we go hide in a hunting blind.
Okay.
And what we're doing is this great horned owl is basically an aggressor. He's a predator, potential predator of the nest. And so by having his presence there, his horrible, horrible presence there, then these Frisian hawks get super mad, super defensive, and they try to dive down to hit the owl. We've never had an owl injury, knock on wood that that's the case. Because again, these hawks are big, but they're also not like the bravest birds ever either.
Right.
So they're not going to try to hit the owl, they just stoop down to basically like try to chase it off. And then they go through our nets. And so yeah, that's one way to catch. That's the main way that we use to catch Frisian hawks.
It's interesting. Yeah, I've never thought about using basically a dummy animal. To, like, I mean, like, I've seen like, putting out, animals as like, bait, but not like in a way that you're using like a big ferocious animal that's gonna like, the opposite way. So.
And we do have these smaller traps called Balshachi traps that we put little gerbils into as well too. Okay. So they're protected because they're in usually like an inner cage or an outer cage that has fishing line kind of loops on them.
Oh, I've seen a few of those for I don't know, like we just had them in our wildlife lab.
Oh, okay.
And it was just sitting in there, and you could see like little fishing line loops that come out. I don't know what they were going to try to catch with them or not.
There's
some old study probably 20 years ago.
Oh, but and what's awesome is if you replace the loops with something new, they're probably good to go.
Okay.
And people use them for kestrels all the way to like goshawks as well too.
Okay.
So like loop dependent, size of the cage dependent as well too. People put rabbits in for golden eagles. And so we take these small bait animals on field trips, is what we call them.
We're gonna go have fun today.
Yeah, we're gonna go meet new friends. Yeah, and contribute to science. Yeah. And we do take very good care with them. People always ask like, oh, does it feel bad? It's like, well, we feel bad, but nobody's ever gotten hurt before. And the owls that we use are unfortunately owls that have been rehabbed, but not to the point of being able to be released again. So they're essentially in captivity for the rest of their life, and they make really, really good trapping animals. So yeah.
Try to get some
they're
good
helping out.
stimulus out of it and everything,
Yeah,
and they're not
exactly.
like in the facility all the time. So.
And we spoil them. They always come back overweight. We always have to put them on a diet as soon as we give them back at the end of the season. So, yeah.
Well, it's hard not to. I mean, you just kind of want to keep giving them treats.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look what I found today. I got you something special. And then, down the hatch. And so we make our owls fat.
So you said something about you're putting transmitters on them. So what type of like remote sensing do you guys do? Because I figured that's probably, especially out in these big wide areas, something that's probably very important to be able to see what's even going on out there, because you can't just sit there and watch these hawks all the time.
Oh, that's a really good question. So so we're monitoring what they're doing on a couple of different levels. Some of the really fun work that we've done in the last couple of years, fun as in like type 2 sufferfest kind of fun, which means that you are really suffering, but you can really enjoy the thought of it afterwards. It's type 2 fun. So we put video cameras up at nests at a subset of some of these nests, because the satellite transmitters are great. They email you locations of where the birds are, they give you speed, they give you like elevation of where the bird was, and lots of really good information like that. But part of the question is where are they hunting? What are they bringing back? How often are they bringing it back, and so forth? Because Phrygian stocks are essentially, they're totally tied to their stomachs. If they're having a really good ground squirrel year, or the prairie dogs are doing really well as well, then they're going to have a really good nesting year. So we really want to know what they're eating and where they're catching it from. So then we've got these they're tiny little, we call them lipstick cameras, because they're essentially the size of a lipstick tube. But then they attach to giant 60-pound marine batteries, and it takes 4 of them.
That's always the big thing, is the batteries with any of this.
It just kills you. So
this awesome, like tiny little, like James Bond quality,
exactly.
Camera,
Spy
and
camera.
then boom,
and then it trails down, and then it's a little cluster of 4 60-pound batteries. So all of our technicians and myself are often in really good shape midsummer. But it's horrible, painful work, because they're heavy, and you gotta walk up with them and bring them back and swap them all out. But from the video footage, it's pretty awesome, because it's pretty high quality imagery. And again, we have a couple of different cameras set up on the nest. We can actually see what they're bringing in, and some of this stuff is actually really surprising as well too, because as we know, other studies have shown that they're very tied to ground squirrels and to prairie dogs. But the first time we saw somebody bring a duck in, it was like an enormous pintail duck. And so one of the neat things that we found from that is that birds that are nesting closer to wetlands that have a lot of riparian vegetation, or kind of like varied landscapes around those wetlands as well too, we're bringing back a lot more ducks than birds that were nesting way out in the open prairie in the uplands that didn't have any wetland near it. And it kind of makes sense, because a duck is like this big, you can bring one of those back, or you can bring 3 ground squirrels back. And so for us, that was really new, and also, just undiscovered so far.
So with videos, like, how many hours of video are you talking about? Because I know someone else that does nest cam work, and the amount of video that they're doing, like they're actually like doing a SciComm, or not SciComm, well, I always love SciComm, so it's always on my mind, citizen science, where they're having people all over the world hoping to like catalog and go through their videos. So like, how much video do you guys have for your study?
I used to have that number at my fingertips. I want to say we have 46,000 hours of video over 90-some nests over 3 to 4 years of work.
Nice. How would you guys like to watch a 46,000 hour
it's
long
awesome.
movie?
You can come do it. You can get a cool science project out of it. And that's exactly what we do. A large part of our program is mentorship as well too. And so we have supervised anywhere from 1 to 8 undergraduate students working on their own independent study projects. And it's great. We've set up a protocol database, and they watch video to answer their questions. They develop a question research project, research objectives, how they want to tackle it, and we really just guide them through it. And we've got 1 paper published out of that, which is super awesome.
Nice.
And hopefully
anytime you can do that in our undergrad, it's really impressive.
Exactly, and it was really neat, because what we found was that, this is so bonkers, ferruginous hawks can tell when a storm is coming because they can sense barometric pressure dropping.
Wow.
And so then when the barometric pressure drops, they're like, oh no, my nest might blow out. And they actually go and they bring back more nesting material right before the storm.
Huh,
We were
interesting.
asking, do they bring more food back before a storm? And do they bring back more after the storm to compensate for when they can't hunt? And this undergrad, this remarkable student was like, hey, have you guys ever noticed they bring back a lot of nesting material before storms? And we were like, No. And that's published now, so
Nice.
it's awesome. But that is how we have some of that data subsampled out of the 46,000 hours.
Which, I mean, it's nice too, because having so many people with the different eyes and that different stuff, you're going to notice those things, like, because sometimes you get so tuned in on the one particular question that you're
Absolutely.
asking that you forget all these other cool things. And you have someone else that's like, da da da, I'm going to come around it from this way. And you're like, looking like, why did we never think of that?
That's exactly how
But
this paper happened. It was really cool. Because the work that I'm focused on is trying to understand where birds live, how human impacts might change where they live, and then ultimately if that affects their reproduction at all, how their nesting happens. And so then I was in this zone where I was like, what kind of food are they bringing back? How big are the items? So forth, so forth, so forth. And yeah, it was really cool.
Nice. So I noticed that you were on Bio Tweeps.
Oh, that's
a little while
right.
ago.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that and like your whole SciComm like mentality and what you do. You know, with being on Twitter, like how has that helped you with science and connecting with other people?
Okay, that's...
I've asked you to like a whole bunch right there. But
No, that's awesome. I've always really enjoyed science communication. I didn't always know that it was a thing called science communication.
Hashtag SciComm, everybody.
Exactly,
So.
hashtag SciComm. But I think that's wonderful because then that really, when you give something a label like that, that gives you that much more of an opportunity to go learn more about it and connect with people, which is what I've done on Twitter. So I've been on Twitter for just over a year and like a couple months or something like that, and I've met awesome people that I get to meet at this conference, like this person.
Yes, I mean,
So
we only knew each other on Twitter beforehand, so I mean, it really does help connect,
Yeah.
and you get when you can actually meet up with people, I think it like bridges that gap so much easier. You're not like uncomfortable with people like when you're first out, like, hi, how's it going?
So what
It's
do
all
you
right.
do?
Like, hey, I'm really good to meet you. Come here and hug me.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
Right.
exactly what we did last
Yeah,
night when we met.
for sure.
It was so good. So yeah, the connections have been wonderful, and the outreach has been, I think, really positive as well too. One of the things that I really try to make sure that at least I'm thinking of is not preaching to the choir. And Twitter is really good for that because I follow a lot of scientists, and some scientists follow me back. But then there are birders. There's young students in elementary and high school that follow me back as well too. But I think the birding community and these students, especially because they're young, that's really the audience that I'm trying to tweet to. So then occasionally I might have like, oh, this is a really cool scientific discovery. It's super boring because it's about stats or methods or something. I'll try to either spice it up or just tweet it and just, it's gonna, the people who pick it up, the people who pick it up are gonna pick it up, and that's fine. But then I try to make sure that I have a really like more fun, more approachable science kind of message that's out there as well too. Some of the Twitter accounts that I follow are like Parrot of the Day, and it's amazing because birddiversity is totally bonkers. And I grew up in North America. We have really cool birds. We start to actually get exposed to like crazy South American parrots or like Australian cockatoos and stuff that, again, I'm Australian cockatoos, I'm like, yeah, the white ones. Like, no, there's so many more that are out there. So if like a totally like bananas bird like pops up on my Twitter account, I'm tweeting that.
Yeah, I'm
That's
sharing
so
it with other
neat.
people because otherwise you're never gonna make exposure. Because I know, like with me, like I have my North American Eastern guide to stuff, and so it's just that's what I use, and it's pretty much all I'm exposed to, unless you get like that random tweet that someone's sending out, that awesome picture, like, oh, cool.
Oh my goodness.
So,
and there's so many like wonderful photographers out there that it's just like, oh, this has to go up. Like, this should be shared. Everybody should see this photo. So that's been kind of that important component because, again, I'm trying to not preach just to people who are like, okay, science is neat, birds are neat, but the people that are interested in it for interest's sake as well, too.
Right. Well, and the other thing too, it's like I've heard a lot of people say like it's that echo chamber of things of where you're just we're all saying the same thing back and forth to each other. We already know it, but we're just repeating it still because we want to be able to talk and say something about it because we feel like we should. But the whole thing with science is at the end of the day we have to be able to get the word out to everyone else. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. So like if you're trying to protect an endangered species, it's great if the scientists know, but you aren't going to be the ones who are actively going out and writing the policy to be able to make that happen. You're advising the policymakers, you're advising the public, but if they decide that they're not willing to like make that change to how they live their lives to protect that animal, or make that new law, it's not going to happen. And you have to use science communication, I think, to be able to get that word out.
Exactly. Some of the people that I'm kind of most excited to follow are some of the industry Twitter accounts, actually. So most recently I've been following some of the wind energy accounts.
Okay.
I follow some of the oil and gas accounts, sort of like CAP, which is the Canadian Association of Petroleum Products.
There you go.
And then there's American Wind.
By the way, caveat, Janet had a very rough night getting into here, so we are very lucky that we got her for the Periscope. Yeah. How long were you stuck in Cleveland?
For many hours, but the last 36 hours before this, I had about 2 hours of sleep because I was in transit from not actually that far, but it was just a really awesome travel day. But yeah, some of the wind accounts, some of the oil and gas accounts are really interesting because just to get a different perspective, again, I hang out with a bunch of wildlife biologists. I work with a bunch of endangered species biologists. We talk the same language, we have the same interests, and our priorities are the same. So to have some of those different perspectives, I think, is really important, just to get us, and get me specifically, out of my own bubble.
Right. Well, because I know with me, mute swans are invasive to North America, and so, but there's a lot of people who don't understand that, or who are very defensive about some of the management techniques that are being used to help control them. And so by going out and looking at their websites or other things, it helps me to be able to better understand, because I can't just be like, well, my way's the right way. I need to be able to stand in all their opinions and be able to help incorporate what I'm saying, to either one, help reach them and help them to be able to better understand where the science is coming from, or two, maybe I need to expand my mind, and maybe some of the things that they're saying might be right, and my way might not be the best way to do things. So.
Well, and I can see with swans that there's probably a really strong emotional attachment, right? They're really important culturally. They're just big, charismatic birds, right? Yeah. And I think, and again, we think swans are pretty cool as well too, but we also have our science background and our research objectives, and so to interact with people on a level like Twitter, on a platform like Twitter, then I think gives you more insight into what their emotional arguments are.
Exactly.
And so then you can build better, I guess, tools to address some of those, and how, because again, it's hard to argue with emotional arguments, especially if you're just, if you're like me, that's not in my brain whatsoever for something like that.
Says this.
Exactly. The graph says this.
Well, and the thing with industry, though, too, when you're saying we need to protect, this amount of area for these birds, the person that's running that company is saying, but I'm providing this amount of jobs for everyone here. Where do you help draw the line? Is the bird more important than jobs for people? And it helps you understand where everyone in the community is coming from.
Exactly, what their priorities are. And yeah, I feel like I appreciate that a lot more after this exposure. And I've gotten some, when I hosted BioTweeps, I think that was in November, December, it was really good as well too, because again, there's a lot of scientists that follow BioTweeps, but there's a lot of people who have a general interest in science and biology that follow it. And so then the types of questions that I was getting was a really good, again, eye-opener, and good for getting me out of my own bubble, because a lot of those questions I take for granted. I go, yeah, well, we know that, or this is how we do it, or that's just the way, this is the way it is. But to think about it and to reframe it, and to communicate that was just eye-opening, and good practice, really good practice.
So BioTweeps, they do a new scientist each week that talks about their research, and everyone can ask them questions. That's the basis. Okay. There's a couple of different bio Twitter things that they are always cycling people in. It's always tough to remember which one is which. So okay. How about we open it up for any questions? Does anyone have any questions for Janet? If not, I'll keep asking random questions while you guys come up with some questions to think of. So, but anything about her research, academia, science, communication, what it's like to be a Canadian and have to be down in the American, national capital. Is this the first time you've been to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, D.C. is awesome. I've seen 0.01% of it so far, but it's been really, really, really good. We
didn't want to walk you too far last night after you finally got.
You had to carry me, but it was nice. And I'm looking forward to spending the week here. It's very hot and very humid.
Yes.
We get that as well in Canada, but not from where I'm from.
Okay.
That is
Yeah,
nice.
we don't think of that with Canada. We think you guys are always cold.
It's
and,
snowy
yeah.
and we ride polar bears. That is not true. But yeah, this isn't the weather that we're used to. The South
No.
is very, very nice. I like it a lot.
And I have to admit, like, you know, I spent a number of years living in the South, and it's still pretty warm.
Okay, that
So,
makes me feel a bit
yeah.
better. It's just like, wow.
Yeah. I was outside for a while because I'm like, you know, I've got that Southern blood. I should be able to handle it. And
Yeah.
so I was outside. I think I lasted about 45 minutes, and I'm like,
That's pretty good.
Okay, I need to get
That's
away.
pretty good. Every time I've ducked back into air conditioners, it's like, oh, thank God.
Which is freezing cold in here because they've got it really good. We got a thing
Aw.
from Science in Michigan. Not a question, but thank you for speaking with Nicole. Very interesting discussion. Stay cool. Yes,
That's
definitely.
awesome. Good advice.
Yeah. So yeah, but all of us have been saying how we need to have jackets around. Like Janet right now is actually wearing a jacket.
Oh, my
you know?
face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're inside and they've got the air conditioning cranked up like super high. So, but we're not going to complain because we'd rather have it super cold where we can layer up versus
Yeah, exactly.
hot
Sweat.
definitely, and then you know having to sit through talks when it's hot and warm. Like no one wants to do that. So
I've done that before. Not good.
yeah. So any other questions out there? If not, I'm gonna throw up the little flashing awesomeness of our Twitter handles. So Wildlife Bio Gal or
Janiting bio.
we're gonna have
I'll
you
remember
memorize
that.
it.
I know.
So feel free to tweet either of us. You know, if you've got questions for later about stuff. Also, if you want to be able to watch this later or just go back over some things, go to wildlifebiogal.com where you can find the links to YouTube, Periscope, SoundCloud. Hopefully, I'll get those up in a little bit. If not, feel good with signing off. Anything else you want to say about science and life, or
No.
should we go get some dinner?
Yeah, let's go grab some dinner.
Yeah,
And
getting
yeah,
hungry.
I think Nicole's gonna have some really awesome stuff coming through at NAOC, especially like tomorrow's science communication workshop.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so 8:30 tomorrow morning, we're broadcasting the science communication workshop. I think the first half is about presentation skills, so to help you be a better presenter, say when you're at conferences or other things, or even hopefully situations like this. I mean, this is one thing that they don't teach us is how do you do interviews? I mean, it's such a quality skill to be able to have an interview with someone.
Absolutely.
And then the second half is going to be about being a scientist on Twitter, which if you're a scientist and you're on Twitter, it's definitely going to be beneficial to you to tune in for that. So I'll be broadcasting all of that. I think it goes from 8:30 to noon tomorrow, I believe. Yes. So the Tiny Bird Girl, can't wait for the workshop tomorrow. Yes, can't I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. There's some really, really good people in there. You're going to see some big scientist names on there that are really good with science on Twitter and other science communication stuff. So it should be really good. And then I think Wednesday I'm Periscoping the plenary talk with the we have a NASA scientist astronaut. So she's
be
like,
so
yeah,
awesome.
this is going to be really cool. So you
Yeah.
get to watch that live. And we'll try to get, a bunch of other things. We'll be broadcasting some people's talks as well. So, yeah, tune in for those. And we'll try to keep adding more things as we can, get more scientists to jump in and have some fun on Periscope. So
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
So, anyways, keep up to date. I'll have everything on Twitter when things are coming up. And just tune in when all that happens. So, until then, see you guys later. And have a great afternoon. Evening, afternoon, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, it works. So.